Good evening. Welcome to Progressive Soup. Bob Garavel and I are going to have a discussion about two interesting topics this evening. One being our recent trip to Woodstock for the 40th anniversary. A few weekends ago, was it? About 3 or 4 weekends ago?
August 15th.
Thank you. You're such a good one.
4 a.m., Dave.
Yeah, August 15th, 4 a.m. we left. And we're also going to talk about a trip we have planned this Thursday, which is October 1st, down to Central Park to visit Strawberry Fields. And those of us in the audience that know about John Lennon know that John lived in the Dakota apartment building with Yoko Ono until he was killed on December 10th many years ago. And right across from the Dakota where they lived in Central Park, a little niche carved out that's called Strawberry Fields after the song that he and the Beatles did. Now, when we went up to Woodstock, we went up there pretty early in the morning. Tell the audience about our trip up there.
Well, Dave, you're going to help me with it because you were the one that was driving the car. Thank God. I was half asleep at 4 o'clock in the morning. Now that I'm retired, I'm not used to getting up that hour. But anyway, I'm glad you decided to go up at that hour. I'm glad we both came to that agreement because it was a good hour to travel. There wasn't a lot of traffic on the road. And we left at my place at 4 a.m., and I think it probably took us 2 hours. We ran into very little traffic, and we couldn't go by that old song. By the time we got to Woodstock, we were 500,000 strong. Was that Crosby, Stills, Nash?
Yeah.
Because I think we were the first two there, maybe. And we got to the site, and we found it very easily. It wasn't hard. The first place we went to was Jaeger's Farm, where they had the site of the concert 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I remember very, very vividly walking around in the fields that morning.
That was
just as the sun was coming up.
Very memorable experience.
And I don't know about you, Pal, but my legs were getting soaking wet, but I wasn't really into the wetness. I was more into the goodness that was all around us, which kind of was like the spirit of Woodstock 1 when they...
We had our own little wetness. This day was sunny and bright, but early in the morning you had that morning dew, and we walked through all those fields of flowers. And
right, we went to the fields, and I guess we were looking for the site of the original concert, and I guess we were kind of like had wanderlust,
yeah.
And we were just wandering around aimlessly, and it was such a beautiful. For those folks in the audience who've been to Bethel, New York, you can understand what I'm saying. Bethel, New York is expansive farmlands, expansive, beautiful. And we walked around, and it was just a beautiful experience being there. And we got some great photos. Shortly after we got there, which was very interesting, we came to the residence of Mr. Yeager.
Yasgur, yep.
Yasgur.
That's right, because he came out and it's actually Max Yasgur's son.
How do you spell that?
Yasgur, Y-A-S-G-U-R. But Max Yasgur's son came out, his son was there, and he identified the one little piece of land left in Bethel, which is still belongs to the Yasgur family. And that's where the first campground we got to.
I understand, though, it's going to be in National Archives for preservation as a historical. But, Dave, it was just like when we got there, it was like we were in a time capsule, and it was maybe 1969 all over again. And I soon realized the real flavor of that, not only when I got there and the sun was coming over the fields, and the Queen Anne's lace was so thick in the fields that it made the whole fields look like they were white, the dew on the grass. But when we got a chance to walk off the beaten path, so to speak, and we met some of those campers in the campgrounds, and God, they opened their arms to us like we were their brothers and sisters.
Yep, it was pretty interesting. We walked back through the woods to through where some makeshift campgrounds had been set up, and folks had brought out a few of them had an impromptu stage there with some instruments, and they were just going to spend some of the day just jamming. Very different.
A lot of fellowship.
Yeah, very different from what we came to later on when we actually went by what's now the Woodstock Performing Arts and Center. There was a concert there that afternoon, and you had, I imagine, some of the flavor of Woodstock there, but a lot of the groups that were there were dribs and drabs of what used to be groups. Whereas I think the people that we ran into that were a little bit hippie-ish, a little bit beatnikish, they were a lot more real, a lot more down to earth. Tell the audience about Grandpa and Grandma Woodstock.
Grandpa and Grandpa Woodstock. Well, as we talked about going to the first campsite, I use that word campsite. That's where the people were camping. We also went to another area which was another campsite, but there seemed to be like a main facade there where they had people that were walking up and down, and there were souvenir stands that you could buy, peace symbols, which was certainly in sync with the day. And there were a lot of colorful people there that we were fortunate enough to photograph, which I thought was fascinating. We happened to be walking down the main road there, and I happened to see a very interesting man. You weren't with me, you were chatting with somebody else.
Yeah, now when you say main road, of course, a main road in Woodstock, in Bethel, New York, is about the width of a little country lane.
Well, this was a populated area where people were congregating. And I happened to look across the street, and there was a man with a long robe on, and he had hair probably almost down to his knees, and he looked like he was well above 70. And I had this itching desire to talk to him. I wanted to see where he was coming from and what his role was up at the 40th anniversary. So I ran across the street, and you were there, and I said, Dave, we got to see what we can do with this man, see if we can get a picture of him, because he is really a colorful person. And matter of fact, I went up to him and I said, I think you're one of the most colorful people we have seen here today. He said, just call me Grandpa Woodstock. Now I'm saying he could have been in his 80s. We didn't really get into heavy dialogue with him.
I would guess he might have been in his 70s at the original Woodstock. He was pretty old.
And for the folks out in the audience tonight, I do have the photograph. If anybody's interested, I'd be willing to share it with them.
And I can email them copies if they'd like, because we got some pretty interesting photos.
And he gave me a little postcard. I don't remember. He gave me a little postcard, and he said, peace, love, prosperity. And I really got a flavor of what humanity was with this man, what it should be all about. And what I remembered most of our encounter with him is how far detached we are from that hippieism that we once relished. Not necessarily the drug culture, there's a difference. I'm saying that fellowship. And people ask me, what is the big difference between now and then? I now use as a metaphor, well, we were a lot less afraid to hitchhike than we are now. But Grandpa, and he would, by the way, you remember his wife, I guess it was his wife.
Yeah.
She was another hippie-ish. Once a hippie, always a hippie. They never really looked like they sold any of their convictions to the corporate world with their image. They were just great. We didn't talk to them that long. But there were other people. Remember that young couple?
Yeah.
And she was a sweetheart. She was really quite a young lady. She was there with her husband, and I happened to run into her. She must have been 19 or 20, and she was telling me, I met her, as a matter of fact. Some lady was selling roses for the American Cancer Society, and she said, I don't have $1. Well, I had just bought one, a rose, 3 or 4 minutes earlier. So I said to her, I heard her being solicited from the lady from the American Cancer Society. I went up to her and I said, here's mine. This is what we did at the original Woodstock. And she took it. Now, that was the mood of the day. And shortly thereafter, I met her husband, and they were both living in a tent in Pennsylvania. But you know something? The key word is humility.
The humility was really the word of the day.
And there seemed to be the anger with the corporate society that we see today, the meism that we didn't really demonstrate as overtly in those days.
Well, more than the anger, there really wasn't, I didn't sense as much anger towards what they didn't have, but I sensed a humility and a quiet pleasure with the simple things that they did have.
Right. I mean, they were more appreciative of the things that they had, the simple things that they had each other, as opposed to the material things that they obviously felt justifiably they did not need. So That was the flavor of Woodstock 1 that was carried over into the 40th anniversary. It was a wonder. And we talk about other people. I don't know if you remember when we were at the post office.
Yes.
Of course,
yes.
I have to tell the audience I'm a retired postal mail carrier. And so I had an inclination to go into the post office, and they had the stamp there that they were canceling Woodstock 40th anniversary. We were walking outside the post office, and we happened to run into a young man. He looked very conservative, if I can use that as a stereotype. He was at the original Woodstock, and he was a doctor. And I told him about the cancellation that the post office was offering for that one day. And I asked him, what was the most remarkable thing you remember about Woodstock 1? He said, going there with my friends from Vermont. A primary doctor up in Vermont. All different kinds of people up there. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful experience.
And a lot of us have evolved, I guess, a lot of us have become more real world, not more conservative, but more staid in our ways, perhaps. But at the same time, I think a lot of us have maintained that that dignity that young couple still had. And there they were. They had been both unemployed and looking for work, looking diligently for work, and traveling around almost like gypsies looking for work, and willing to settle in somewhere. If they could find jobs, they'd settle in somewhere and have a home and do the things like we do. But at the same time, they were patient with the world and patient with themselves in finding that niche somewhere.
Their lives seemed to be uncluttered. It reminded me of Sly and the Family Stone, who performed at Woodstock 1, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm an everyday people.
Everyday people, certainly.
I'm an everyday people.
Yeah.
We got to live together. And I sense that. I found that the beauty of it, of course, we were there, and this was for the 40th anniversary, so I don't know if we would be finding the same thing there today without all the ceremony and all the emphasis that was put on the 40th anniversary. But the emphasis seemed to place a fellowship on the people we met, and there just seemed to be that uninhibited, hi, how are you?
Yeah, I felt that too.
I felt a very, very openness. We talked to the people that had that 1969 Cadillac with the peace symbols on there.
Yes, yeah, that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it was just a great experience. It was almost like something I needed to do to give myself a stroll down memory lane.
Yeah, and
you can't live in the past, but it certainly is nice to recollect those memories.
Some of the folks we ran into there, they were not dropouts by any means. I mean, we talked with different groups of people and different individuals about some of the political issues of the day, health care and things of that nature, and other political issues of today. And they weren't dismissive of us either way. Some of us agreed, some of them disagreed with us, some of them agreed with us. But they were willing to talk, and they were pretty much in tune with what they believed. It wasn't just that they had beliefs based on slogans, but they all had their own individual beliefs based on a lot of careful thought. And I like that, when people can discuss things calmly and rationally and agree to disagree.
As human beings.
And as human beings.
Certainly
agree
a
to
far
disagree,
cry
yeah.
from what we see now, especially with the debate on health care and with all the deceptions we see. And I'm not going to express myself here in either side, but it seems like there seems to be a lot of divisiveness, a lot of anger, a lot of political maneuvering here to get their point across for their own political well-being and for their own corporate well-being too, which we don't really want to get into. I certainly don't think we broached a lot of those topics up there because, like you said, it was just like we were people and we weren't going to let those issues interfere with the fact that we were people. I think people today basically want to do the right thing. Unfortunately, the media today is pulling them so far away from what is the right thing and what is the wrong thing that there's a lot of distortion. But when we were out in those fields, man, that Queen Anne's lace was not lying to us.
Oh, yeah.
It was wonderful, man.
So many wildflowers we saw. And you remember we saw, as we were walking up that little country road coming back out of the woods, there was a red barn, and I'd say somewhat worn, somewhat careworn and tatterworn. But up in the windows, a couple of the windows, somebody had from the inside painted pictures of, I think John Lennon was up in one of the windows, a picture of Janis Joplin up in one of the windows, almost as if they were ghosts looking out over.
Well, there was a
over
certain amount of romanticism involved with the singing then, and I'm not comparing it today, but every generation claims their generation's music is the best, and we certainly had a lot of music that was exhibited at Woodstock. One that was absolutely beautiful, and you know, I'm thinking of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young again, who sang, by the time we got to Woodstock, we were 500,000 strong, and I dreamed I saw a bomber death plane riding shotgun into sky, turning into butterflies above our nation.
Yeah.
All these songs for hope and humanity. There was that feeling that, yes, we can make a difference. History proved that we did make a difference, because we didn't. A lot of people never really changed, and I think that was the impact of the day, and that was due to many situations that were happening in our country culturally. One of them, probably the primary one, probably was the Vietnam War. But it certainly was a great experience, and I'm looking forward to the 50th.
Oh.
That should be.
Yeah.
That should be. I think we're going to leave at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I do think it was wise that we left early, because, as you remember, we were coming out.
Yeah.
The lines going in for the concert were about 2 or 3 miles long.
Oh, yeah, yeah, the lines, because going to the theater there.
And we had great weather.
It was perfect weather. And as we mentioned about how just an hour, hour and a half away from New York City, just wide open countryside, and really not dramatically changed from 40 years ago. Still pretty
well preserved, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much a rural area.
Well, we can get into the topic now. What really was the essence of Woodstock? Yeah, I mean, we have a movie coming out. It's probably already out now.
Yeah, yeah.
Was it Return to Woodstock, or?
I don't know.
Anyway, it's about the whole dynamics of how Woodstock started, how they got the site, so on and so forth. But there seems to be a great deal of fascination now with the Woodstock. And I think that's legitimate. I think it brought people together, and it brought a lot of people together, conservative. There was no such thing as, it was all hippies.
Yeah, it was.
It was all, there were conservatives there were liberals, it was just, people were there for, I think, not only for the love of music, but it was fellowship. And I don't think that's too far-fetched for me to say.
And the mud and the horrible weather conditions that they had, which could have caused problems.
There weren't any.
There weren't any. There weren't any. People just hunkered down, rode out the storm, got to know their neighbors, well, neighbors that were next to them, and had a good time, made the best of a tough situation, and sometimes the best vacations are like that, when tragedy or when problems occur. You've been away on vacations, and problems occur, and because of that, because of the way you handle those problems and work through them, it makes the vacation all the more pleasurable.
Well, I guess it's fair to say, David, and I don't know if you agree with me, if there was one event that could really define the 60s or 70s, could it not be Woodstock?
Yeah, probably. There probably were
I mean, there are
a
a few others, but that's one that comes to mind for me.
That's the biggest, I think, positive event of my growing up. And I was 15 at the time, and going to Tom Costello's all-sports camp in Matamoros, Pennsylvania.
That wasn't too far?
About 25 miles away from there. And now, of course, growing up, down in Greenwich, I had seen the poster on the side of the building in Stamford along Interstate 95 with the guitar and the dove and the hand on the guitar. So we knew what was coming. We knew that there was going to be a festival there. But at the summer camp, I was inclined to run away on Sundays and go into town and buy the New York Times and buy some food that wasn't camp food, if you know what I mean.
You were a renegade.
No bug juice, please. So at any rate, by the time it hit the paper about what was going on in Woodstock, you couldn't get there. Because otherwise, with all due respect to my mom and dad, who would have been very upset if I had hitchhiked 25 miles away from summer camp, and I'm sure the camp folks would have been a little upset too, I would have gone. But couldn't get there, sorry. So we all had to enjoy it after. That was, of course, that was the summer of landing on the moon also. That first step of the landing on the moon, it was at 2 or 3 in the morning, and we stayed up to watch that in July.
Well, you know, you think about it too, and you look at the leaders that we had. I'm talking about the Martin Luther King Jr.,
who had died just the year before.
Bobby Kennedy,
Who died
John
just the year
Kennedy.
before.
We lost, I think Malcolm X died around that time.
A couple of years.
We lost some of the musicians. We lost Jimi Hendrix. We lost Janis Joplin.
Yeah.
We lost Jim Morrison. Of course, they were non-political, but...
and they made it through Woodstock, all 3 of them, but didn't last much after that. The year later, all 3 were dead. But Woodstock was, for some of them, their last hurrah. And then we moved on to the 70s. But thankfully, through having...
how things have changed.
Through having movies and having the other things to recollect and to look back on the time, we still have that time. It's still there with us.
Well, Dave, I think, and as I said to this young couple who I just met that were living in the tent, I said, one of the things that we had, that your generation is, and we probably would have done the same thing, is we didn't really have the material things that the people have today. Now, it sounds like when my parents were talking, well, you kids have so much today. They were saying that when we were the Woodstock generation.
Yep.
They were telling us we had so much. So every generation seems to be getting more and more and more. But it certainly was, in that regard, a lot simpler times, maybe both economically and materially.
I think times, in retrospect, times always look simpler. And we look back on the good old days because, in retrospect, we wipe out a lot of the things our bad memories kind of fall by the wayside, and our good memories stay with us. So
for most people,
I think recollection is very subjective. It's not objective at all. But let's segue from that onto our trip coming up to New York.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned it.
To Strawberry Fields.
I'm glad you mentioned
which is right across the street, of course. From
Are we leaving at 4 o'clock?
Yeah, we're going to leave at 4 o'clock so we can beat the traffic. We can again see the sunrise in a different locale. And we'll be right across the street from Central Park West from the Dakota, where John Lennon was murdered. And we'll be in a little spot in Central Park, which is known as Strawberry Fields. It's a little niche that's been carved out in memory of John Lennon, and people come and they
put flowers,
meditate, pray, put flowers out. They all sing a song. Strawberry fields forever.
Well, my memory of, and I am so glad that we decided, I think I said as we were coming back, next stop Strawberry Fields when we were coming back from Woodstock. I don't think there's too many people in our generation that didn't have high regards for John Lennon. Some may have been questioning his lifestyle and some of his almost seemingly chameleon personality for some. I mean,
a little bit edgy and a little bit harsh in his
I think we can attribute that to the drugs that he unfortunately was so involved with. But I'm going to share with the audience a nice experience I had, and I don't know if I ever shared this with you, David. It was about 6 or 7 years ago that I was 6 or 7 years ago, I was eulogizing John Lennon in the Danbury News-Times. You know his line, "So this is Christmas, and look what we've done." Christmas doesn't go by where that doesn't cause me to shed at least a few lakeful tears. It's a really sad song, and it really is very sensitive to the issues that he was so close to. I liked the song, and I eulogized John Lennon, and the words just kind of popped out of my head and fell on the paper, and I said, I'd like to send it to Yoko Ono. Now, I don't know her address, and my postal knowledge is give it a whirl, give it a shot, but always put your return address on if it doesn't get there. So I addressed a letter to the editor that I wrote about John Lennon, took a copy of it, sent it to her, and I addressed the letter, Yoko Ono, John Lennon's widow, New York City. Didn't know the zip code. And I waited.
Post office found it.
Well, 3 months passed, and I go to my mailbox, and there in my mailbox is a letter from New York City. And I never got the letter back, so I didn't know what happened to it. I never even thought of it. But there was a letter from New York City embossed with the New York City address on it.
Yep.
I think she lived at 8th Street, I believe it was, her studio. And I opened it at the mailbox, and it was a pencil sketch of John Lennon and Yoko Ono at their bed-in for peace, which they did, I believe, at the Waldorf Astoria. And she said on there, "To Robert, love Yoko." And I think I started crying at the mailbox. So, you know, that was my attachment and my experience with John Lennon and Yoko Ono.
You reached out, and another human being reached back, and that's pretty special.
And I think you've seen the movie Imagine.
Yep.
Do you remember that segment where they were walking Central?
Might be to me as beloved a song as any that I know.
And they titled the movie. But one of the things that I don't know if you remember in the movie, but it was a very touching point where they were walking in Central Park.
Yep.
And they came across these kids playing basketball. And John Lennon was very, very noted for his ability to talk to all people, be them prominent politicians, local people, common folk. He talked to a lot of people. So he stopped and he talked to these kids that were playing basketball. And the kids looked at him and said, one of them said, "I can't believe I'm standing here talking to John Lennon. I can't believe it." And totally in character, John Lennon said, "I'm just a man that writes music." Interesting.
Not too full of himself, huh?
No, very humble. And I think, isn't that part of the philosophy and part of the beauty of John Lennon?
1 minute? Okay, we got the 1 minute.
We got 60 minutes to Strawberry Fields.
Let's go out.
By the way,
let's
Dave,
let's go out singing it. We're gonna fade out, and we're gonna do our version of.
we might want to close the show too.
Okay, go ahead.
Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. The Lucy that song purportedly was written about died yesterday. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Remember all that controversy that
Julian
Lucy
had a friend
in the Sky with Diamonds were the translated to the initials LSD, and there was all that controversy.
Yeah.
She died today, and that was a friend of Julian. And, in character with her father, he sent her flowers when she was sick.
Okay, we're gonna fade.
Okay, we're gonna do. Let me take you down, 'cause I'm going to Strawberry Fields. Nothing is real, and nothing to get hung about. Strawberry Fields forever. Living is easy with eyes closed, misunderstanding all you see. Boom, boom, boom.
It's getting hard to be
someone, but it all works out. It doesn't matter much to me. Let me take you down, 'cause I'm going to Strawberry Fields. Nothing is real, and nothing to get hung about. Strawberry Fields forever. Strawberry Fields forever. What a song that was. Strawberry Fields. Was that a place? Was that a mirage? Was that something?
I think it was a park in Liverpool growing up, and that's it evolved into the song, which was one of the early videos.
Imagine no possessions. That's another going. It's easy if you think about those words. Imagine no country. Some people think that's communistic. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Because we could all be one.
It's very religious.
It's very religious, but people think it's communist.
Very religious. I think it's what Jesus Christ would espouse too.